Good morning and welcome to the July 31st, 2024 Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners Budget Reconciliation Public Hearing. Before I pass things over to the County Administrator to make a few opening remarks, I do want to say that Commissioner Kemp will be participating virtually this morning. So with that, Bonnie, you want to introduce today's agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Today is our annual Budget Reconciliation Public Hearing. There are four main items occurring at this morning's meeting. First, it is a public hearing. You will receive public comment regarding the budget. Kevin Brickey will actually present a brief overview of the budget before that. And thirdly, the board will consider changes to the recommended budget. The backup materials to receive for this meeting include flag items that board members identified as of last Friday and were included in your agenda package. Since then, several commissioners have mentioned that additional items have been identified or modified. Commissioners may want to speak to that. These or other changes to the budget may be made at a regular board meeting or also at the last budget public hearing on September 19th. Lastly, the board will approve preliminary millage rates as required by Florida statutes. This action is required by state law and will enable the property appraiser to issue the truth in millage notices to the property owners in August. I appreciate all your guidance throughout this entire budget process, and I also want to thank all the department directors who have done an important job to get us to this point as well. And so with that, I think it would be appropriate to hear from Kevin Brickey and give a very brief budget presentation.
Okay. Morning, Kevin.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Brickey, Director of Management and Budget. The FY25 recommended budget has been built in an environment where we have continuing inflation. It's lower, but it's still impacting us. We have slower ad valorem tax growth rate. It's slowed to about 6.9%. From about 11.5 in FY24. So we have some restrained revenue growth compared to recent years. We have had in the couple of previous years some strong growth in sales tax revenues and some strong growth or results in interest income. These tend to be one-time types of revenues, and they have provided some opportunities to use those resources for one-time uses in FY25. We have some public safety issues continuing. Our fire union contract expires at the end of FY24. Some resource requirements for the jails and law enforcement, and some new government mandates that have occurred in the last year. We looked at a number of different strategies as we considered this budget, eliminating long-term vacant positions, implementing some new fire rescue initiatives that the board has approved. We did reduce half-cent sales tax reserves for one-time capital uses, some one-time capital uses for CIT, pay-as-you-go dollars, implementing a general fund millage swap, a reduction of 1/10 of a mil countywide, an increase unincorporated 1/10 of a mil. We'll discuss that a little more. And also funding funding health care for inmates with indigent health care funds, and a portion of the fire rescue department budget also with indigent health care funds where appropriate. The FY25 recommended budget is about $10.15 billion. The operating side, $3.85 billion. About 48% of that is accounted for in public safety, our enterprise funds, water, solid waste, and healthcare services. When we look at the general funds, the countywide general fund, about $1.5 billion, about 56% of the operating expenditures from the general fund go to constitutional officers and outside agencies. And for our unincorporated general fund, that's the fund that funds services that if you were to live in a city, the city would provide those services. So here we're talking about fire rescue services, we're talking about patrol services, law enforcement services, and a few others that tend to be city services. About 68% of the operating dollars in the unincorporated general fund go to public safety. We look at our recommended budget and maintain general fund reserves at the board policy of between 20 and 25%. The recommended budget is at about 23.3%. That is a decline from this year, FY24, of about 23.9%, but still well within the board's policy. As I mentioned, the recommended budget does include what we call a millage swap, 1/10 of a mill. Reduction countywide, it's a $16.8 million reduction countywide. And then on the other side of the ledger, so to speak, a 0.1 or a 1/10 of a mill increase in the unincorporated area. That's a $10 million gain. There's a net change in revenue of a reduction of $6.78 million. So if one has property in the unincorporated area, there is no net change in the property tax bill. If one is in one of the three cities, it does represent a reduction in property taxes. And as a whole, that reduction is almost $6.8 million. The swap was facilitated largely by using indigent health care trust funds to fund inmate health care, a portion of inmate health care, and a portion of the fire rescue budget. And so the additional revenue made available in the unincorporated area can be used for planned new fire rescue initiatives to reduce response times and provide relief to current staff. Again, I mentioned that the impact of a 1/10 of a mill is a net zero to parcels and property owners in the unincorporated area. For a homesteaded home with a assessed value of $350,000, if you're in one of the three cities, it is a net 0.1 mil reduction, and that would be about a $30 savings. We had some areas where, as in every year, we look for some budget efficiencies. And some examples, the millage swap we just discussed, we did eliminate long-term vacant positions in the two general funds. That was about almost $1.5 million. We had some technology and some areas with software where we could save some dollars, and also reducing some operating budget in engineering operations where some efficiencies could be done there and some things be brought in-house. I mentioned that there were some opportunities this year to fund some one-time initiatives, mainly in the capital area, due to the recent strong growth in sales tax and the strong interest revenues. In the community investment tax, we have had pay-go dollars or pay-as-you-go dollars in the past couple of years. We have about $60 million this year. And that is in the recommended budget for transportation primarily, intersections, bridges, sidewalks, road resurfacing, but also about $12 million for a new fire station at Sly and Anderson Road. We also had some opportunity for the same reasons in the half-cent sales tax reserves, where we've had some dollars that can be used for one-time purposes. We were able to fund some fire rescue station replacements, 3 replacements, additional rescue units, about $43 million, some parks improvements and expansions, about $9.4 million, and nearly $1 million in some security upgrades in county facilities. Within the general fund, we were able to look at some needs in parks, some new and existing improvements in parks, and some enhanced maintenance. Looking at some other areas in the general fund budgets, we were able to fund facility expansions and relocations for the medical examiner, the sheriff's headquarters, some additional chemicals for mosquito control, full funding for Upper Tampa Bay Trail, some PSOC or Public Safety Operations Center improvements, some jail maintenance, and also, as we look at every year, to fund the continuing service levels that departments have. And that is, as I say, sort of the normal course of business, where we look at our current operations, how has inflation impacted that, employee compensation, replacement of equipment, some balances in reserves, our constitutional officer budget requests, and also some new mandates, where we've had some mandates come from the state and the federal government that have impacting us. The new nonprofit policy is in play, of course, and all FY24 nonprofit awards were one time. Any new ones for FY25 would be one time. The policy does ask that proposals for funding would be submitted 1 week in advance for board consideration, and also the county administrator cannot change or add nonprofit figures. The flagging process, of course, today in your packet is, as Bonnie mentioned, the flags that you provided us through last Friday. Some of you have some changes or additions since then. You can consider those today, or as Bonnie said, through meetings through September 19th, which is the final budget public hearing. And at the appropriate time, if wished, I can certainly show the flag list on the screen. This is in very small print, but it does occur in your packet in a couple of pages after that. This is the trim motion, the truth in millage motion, where today, by Florida statute, you will set the preliminary millage. The preliminary millage on this trim motion reflects that 1/10 of a mill swap. And it is important in that we're required to do that, so again, the property appraiser can issue those notices to parcel owners in August. And also, except for extraordinary circumstances, you're not able to adopt a millage higher than what you approve in this millage motion today. This is one that's prescribed very much by state law, and we ask that the motion be read verbatim into the record at the appropriate time. We're getting near the conclusion of our budget calendar. Today, of course, is our budget reconciliation meeting. After this, we'll have 2 required public hearings in September. On the 12th, you'll adopt the tentative budget and millage, and on the 19th will be the final conclusion of the process, where you'll adopt the final budget and millage. So that's my presentation. I thank Tom for doing the July 17th presentation to you. Appreciate that very much, and I'm happy to ask questions, or it's appropriate to take public comment at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate your comments and presentation. Any questions for Kevin before we have public comment? Commissioner Wilson?
I just want to make sure, after public comment, we'll go into debate, right, Chair?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, thanks, Kevin. Okay, we'll go into the public comment portion of the agenda. We've got 11 individuals that have signed up this morning. Each person will be given 3 minutes. Please state your name and speak clearly into the microphone. First 3 speakers are David Coleman, followed by Nicole McCutcheon, and then Sheila Simmons-Tribble. Morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Dave Coleman. We're Christians. Let's destroy public schools and nonprofits. That's just weird. I was going to watch online, but I told my friend Mark last week that I would carry his story here. He said, "I know you will." He was awakened at 3 in the morning with a .38 to his head in a robbery attempt. A truck of workers approached and the guy ran off. I asked, "You got someplace safer for tonight?" He said, "No. It's the best spot he's had in a while." As THHI, rare brief, non-recurring, metropolitan, vouchers for families while they last, Tampa Housing Authority, senior housing with years on a waiting list for a cinder block cell, we need to do better. The mayor boasted last night of a 30% rate of permanent housing for the 22,000 that have gone through Catholic Hope and Ybor. Houston has a 60% rate. Affordable housing and support systems to good jobs is imperative. I certainly agree. With 2,000 people on our street in the pit count, hope is the last choice for our long-term homeless. I found out why on a recent visit. 110 died on Hillsborough streets last year. It will be the same again. Feeding Tampa Bay keeps growing. That's not a feather in our cap. I have been to 4 large meetings in Sulphur Springs over the past 2 years. Food Desert was rejected as a need several times, yet the idea was brought here to have a state-run market in this room recently. Why bother to address the detachment of this board, the AHAB, and the Citizens Advisory Committee? Other counties nationally do more with less. We have a $2.3 billion in savings account. The mayor boasted a high credit rating also. When families struggle for various reasons, for necessities they don't often add, but we got good credit. Much of our budget goes to services. You began doubling my water bill, saying that if I want nice things like TVs in every room, I need to pay for them. You raised my garbage bill $85 a year. My complex rounded that to $10 a month. You slashed nonprofits like Enterprising Latinas and Hope while you have $182 million in the housing budget for 2024. The R's here think that they are champions for police and fire, not any more so than the Dems. 233 dead, thousands in trauma centers, 7,000 hit and runs. We all need the best police and fire that we can get. Apparently, Chronister calls Orient Road the biggest homeless shelter and detox center we have. Perhaps if other services and nonprofits that the R's like to strip were in place, we could reduce the burden on them. $10 billion this year. You can manage to do better, not worse. And if you want to save money, why don't you stop the oligarch FDOT widening of 275?
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Nicole McCutcheon, followed by Sheila Simmons-Tribble. Good morning.
Good morning. I am here today to ask that the $10 million allocated for the Hillsborough County Affordable Housing Fund be kept in the 2025 county budget. I ask that you consider this from both a business and quality of life perspective. I have a little sister that I connected with via Big Brothers Big Sisters program when she was 5 years old. She is now 32. She has worked many years as a preschool teacher and rose to being a lead preschool teacher at Sherazetic Preschool for $18.50 an hour, $6.50 above current minimum wage. She lives in Riverview, where the average rent for a one-bedroom is between $1,600 and $1,900 a month. She currently shares a place where half of her rent is $975, well below the average one-bedroom rent. In months where everything goes smoothly, she can pay her bills. However, if she has doctor's appointments, car trouble, or gets sick and has to take some days off, she has to come to me for financial help. She is not able to save for rainy days because there's nothing left once she pays her bills. The average preschool teacher doesn't have me for a safety net. How are families of all income levels going to survive if all qualified preschool teachers have to move out of the Tampa Bay area to find housing they can afford? How is our tourism industry going to survive if restaurant staff, housekeeping staff, and amusement park staff have to move out of the Tampa Bay area for a decent quality of life? The average hourly pay for nurses' aides in the Tampa Bay area is between $18 and $20 per hour, about the same pay as my little sister. How are the elderly who want to live out their lives in their home going to be able to when they can't find nurses' aides to provide support for them? As we heard last year, creative ways are available to keep the $10 million in the Affordable Housing Fund while not raising the millage rate. You can make this feasible. One final thought. Starting October 1st, jails are going to start filling up when homeless can't sleep in public places. Do we really want hard-working residents to go from housed to homeless to jailed when extra expenses occur? Is it increasing jail capacity that we want to spend county funds on, or do we want to provide hard-working residents with safe places to live? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. If you can state your name also for the record, please.
Nicole McCutcheon.
All right, thank you. Got Sheila Simmons-Tribble, And then I don't know if there's a representative from the First United Church of Tampa. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sheila Simmons Tribble, and I'm a member of Bible-Based Fellowship Church. Thank you. I'm a member of Bible-Based Fellowship Church and co-chair of the Hope Affordable Housing Committee, along with the Mental Health Committee, but I am also co-president of Hope. I'm here today asking and sharing our support, or my personal support, for allocating at least $10 million to the Hillsborough County Affordable Housing Fund in the 2025 fiscal year county budget. Allocating this $10 million to the Affordable Housing Fund is needed to create, rehab, and preserve more decent housing for our most vulnerable citizens here in our county. And these are our working families, our seniors, our veterans, and those with disability, and all those with low and very low incomes. This public investment will help leverage additional funds in terms of public and private funds to tackle our county's increasing housing crisis. Now, I'm very concerned when I hear residents talk about and share their struggles for housing. Like a senior member at my church whose rent has increased twice since January, and she just received a notice that it's going to increase again after the first of the year, leaving her to decide whether she's going to pay her rent, buy food, or buy her medications. Where will she go? Will she become a statistic? Yes, Commissioners, seniors are the fastest growing homeless population in our county. 59% of our seniors are struggling financially. I'm also very concerned that there is a growing need to service those in our community with mental health crisis. This really affects those other vulnerable residents I spoke of earlier. These are residents with serious mental illnesses, those trapped in the cycle of the Baker Act, emergency rooms, incarceration, and the homeless. Now, permanent supportive housing, which is housing with professional care management, is needed for these residents to find stability and recovery. With the $10 million in the Affordable Housing Fund, the development of permanent supportive housing could address the need for around 500 of these units, and this would begin to address the mental health crisis in Hillsborough County. Now, I want to thank Commissioner Cohen for visiting Swan Lake Village, the housing facility.
Thank you,
and
ma'am.
thank you so much.
Appreciate your comments. Is there a representative from First United Church of Tampa? If not, Russell Miller, followed by Ben Braver. Come forward, ma'am.
Sorry, Russ. I'm sorry, that might be me. I thought I signed in by name. Good morning. My name is Lois Price, and this is my 20th year volunteering for Hope, and also I'm a member of First United Church of Tampa. In the past few years, I've had the privilege of hearing so many stories related to the affordable housing crisis. And I'm here to speak for allocating $10 million of next year's budget to the Affordable Housing Fund. The importance of that fund can't be overstated. In the past few years, again, I've had the privilege of hearing so many stories related to affordable housing. We visit corporate executives and other professionals in the medical field, and they've told us over and over that people who are not housed cannot be adequately served for medical treatment. Educators, including my own 2 children, have told us that children in overcrowded or substandard housing have tremendous difficulty learning. Some are forced to change schools 2 and 3 times in one school year. People my age and older tell me of having to move from place to place as their rent increases dramatically, but they remain on a fixed income. In fact, seniors are the fastest growing demographic in terms of homelessness. Job recruiters tell us that the availability of affordable housing is critical to attracting talented workers to our community. When we visited an affordable housing community in Lakeland, we heard the story of a man who had been arrested for petty crimes 40 times or more in 1 year when he was unhoused, with each arrest costing that county at least $1,000. After moving into an affordable housing apartment where he had lived for more than a year at the time of our visit, he was able to hold a permanent job and pay his bills without even one arrest after he moved in. So just imagine the thousands of dollars and hours that would be saved by law enforcement and the courts by providing affordable housing for just one person. We are in a housing crisis, but there is a remedy. Since 2019, the county's Affordable Housing Fund has allowed the creation of almost 1,200 new housing units. Of the $48 million allocated for affordable housing since 2019, only $2 million remains unspoken for, uncommitted. With more than 97,000 families, seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities spending over a third of their income on housing, we cannot cut funding for the affordable housing now. Almost all of us have struggled with the hardship of living in housing that is unaffordable or substandard, or we know of someone who has. Failing to support the Affordable Housing Fund is a failure to serve those whom we represent. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Russell Miller, followed by Ben Braver, and then a Humira Avzal. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Russell Miller. I live in Lutz. I'm a data analyst. Another thing that I do, I also canvass. And I've met people in dire need of affordable housing. I knocked on someone's door in 2020 in a poor part of West Tampa. We spoke for a while and it was twilight, and I hadn't realized that in the next door neighbor's yard, they explained as I was just about to leave, was all of their furniture. And she said, well, we don't want what happened to them to happen to us. She was a single mother in her 30s, living with her own mother and her child. And so they were depending on just one income, that of the grandmothers, to take care of the family. How do you recover from something like that? Having all of your belongings pulled out of your house and pulled on the lawn. Obviously, they'd run out of money to pay the rent, to the point where they no longer had money to even hire a moving truck. And where would that moving truck take these belongings? To a storage unit? Maybe they could still afford that. Can you live in a storage unit? You cannot. So they gave up. They left all their things behind to start over. Maybe they're homeless. We don't know. But that's how homelessness happens. You lose everything. There's nothing left to fall back on. Just this year, I met someone while canvassing in North Tampa in an apartment complex just south of Bears Avenue in Livingston. They were on the sidewalk. This was the person I was supposed to talk to. She was black also and had retired recently. They had just raised her rent 20%. There was a moving van in front of her house, and someone was loading all of her belongings onto the van. She was despondent. She didn't know if she'd ever be able to live on her own again. She was going to live with her daughter, but she had no plan for what to do now. Nobody retires expecting your rent to go up 20% in 1 year. And this was not the first time that had happened. This was right after the pandemic as rents were skyrocketing. Worst of all, we're not paying our teachers enough to live on here in Hillsborough County. Florida's teachers are 50th in teacher pay. We've heard that, and we've tried through the school board to get more money allocated for teacher pay, and this body has let us down. What are they going to do when we don't have enough teachers to teach our students? Are they going to let high school dropouts teach our students? Are they going to call up the National Guard and have them come into the classrooms? Is that what we're going to be down to? Impress people into service that they're not trained to do? Are we just going to return to an era when we had many schools where students leave with a degree but are not qualified to go on to college? We need more affordable housing here. Please raise that $2 million back up to $10 million where it belongs.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ben Braver, followed by Humira Avzal, and then Stephen Blinder. Good morning, sir.
Hi, So I've been braver, and it used to be that you could spend a third of your income on your housing, right? You'd have a third to spend on whatever else you need, and a third that would go into savings. But when rent rises 30% in a year, when home prices double in a year and stay there for no good reason, you can't do that anymore. That's why 86% of the low-income people in our community are cost burdened. They have to spend much more than a third of their income on their housing. And we know this. We know that homelessness is a terrible blight on our community, that it hurts people, that it causes untold misery. We hear people's stories right now. And we know the solution. Build more homes. It's really that simple. When the supply is too low, prices rise. The way that we do that, the way that we fix that, is by spending the money. That is our job. That is your job as government officials, to fix our collective problems. Homelessness is destroying people's lives. There are 500,000 units missing from Florida alone, and we need to take a stand. We need to start solving that problem. Putting this $10 million back in there is how you do that. There is a problem that is homelessness, and the solution is always building more homes, building homes that people can afford. As we're talking about, the teachers are not getting enough pay. I'm a teacher. I graduated from USF, go Bulls. I should have got into this economy with a head start, but I am so far behind because there are not affordable homes. I have a full salary. I have a full-time job, but I can't afford to live in this city. We need to fix that. And if all you care about is the economy, if all you care about is corporate profits, then building more homes that people can afford to live in is how you boost the economy. When people spend all of their money only on their rent, only on their housing, they can't afford to spend it on our local businesses, on our local stores. They can't afford to spend it in our economy. It all gets funneled into these monopolies, into these vulture capitalists that take our land, that take our property, and they turn them into rental properties, draining our economy. We need to invest in our people with our tax dollars, not let it all go to waste in these monopolies' pockets. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Humira Abzal, followed by Stephen Blinder, and then Shirley Susich.
Yeah, Humira Abzal. Back in September, the commission voted to cut $10 million appropriation to its Affordable Housing Trust by 80%. Cutting funding and pretending that a problem does not exist does not actually make it go away. But from reading the 97-page agenda from this meeting, you'd never realize that Hillsborough County is in a housing crisis. The word housing is only referenced in connection to 2 projects, both of them items flagged by commissioners as priority, and only one of them is actually a housing-focused project. There are no photos of housing or unhoused residents in the slide deck. We're still in a housing crisis, and we're going to continue to be for a long time. Like you've already heard from the other speakers today, real people, your constituents, are suffering. We need for the county commissions to start focusing more on addressing issues that affect regular people. Almost everyone is feeling the pain of the skyrocketing cost of housing. Our lower income residents are hit the hardest. As a reminder, your job is to represent all residents of Hillsborough County, regardless of their income or the size of their bank account. With the 2025 budget, you have the opportunity to redeem yourselves and reinstate the funds for the Affordable Housing Trust to its previous levels. You could even make up for your previous bad decision by substantially increasing the funding to an even higher level. You can. You're sitting on about $2 billion in reserves. The affordable housing crisis affects everyone, not just the people who can't find somewhere to live. People who have to spend half their income on housing have less money to spend shopping at local businesses. They have less money to spend on helping their children. They have less money to spend on food. They can't save for their futures, and they can't save for their children's futures. There are also thousands of people who move every year or more because their rent goes up and they can't afford it anymore. This constant instability affects neighborhoods and families and makes it especially challenging to give your children what they need to be healthy, safe, and happy. Meanwhile, our local businesses struggle to find employees because there's nowhere they can afford to live within a reasonable distance. And we have older members of the community on a fixed income who are permanently stuck in housing insecurity. People ages 65 and older have had the largest increase in the number of households below the poverty level threshold. That's on the front page of today's Tampa Bay Times. Many people in our community are just one bit of bad luck away from sleeping in their car or in an alley or in front of an empty storefront. At least one county commissioner who voted to axe funds for affordable housing lived in taxpayer-subsidized housing before being elected. The hypocrisy is astounding, especially from someone who leads public prayers. In the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, it is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. Hillsborough gets an F on that test. Please do better.
Thank you, Ms. Hazel. Stephen Blinder, followed by Shirley Susich, and then Geraldine Rogers-Toombs. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Steve Blinder. I am senior pastor at Brandon Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in Brandon. I reside in Brandon, and I know that you already are all very aware that as you make decisions as to whether or not you're going to upgrade our streets, and no one is arguing about the need for new roadways or to upgrade streets, and it falls under community investment. So I would say to you that first and foremost, if we're going to invest in our community, we begin by investing with people needs. You're already aware of the increasing costs of housing across the county and how increasing costs to some of the most needy families are forcing them to make decisions about actually how to live, which medicines they can afford, what quality foods they can buy, and which grocery stores that they can go in. I want to tell you about somebody who is close to me. I want to tell you about a senior citizen. Her name is Andrea. She's a member of Brandon Christian Church. When I met her several years ago, she was renting a one-bedroom, one-bath apartment in Brandon and seemed to be living okay. For the last 3 years, she could only afford, because her rent increased so much, she could only afford now to rent a room in someone's house. Currently, she is paying $975 to rent a room in someone's home, and she is afraid that when it increases, and I want to tell you that she no longer lives in Brandon because she couldn't afford to rent a room in Brandon. When it increases, she will be forced into homelessness. She already has had to make a difficult choice in order to be able to live, and she takes her cardiac medicine and cuts it in half so that she could have at least some of it each of the days. And I ask you now to just imagine for a moment, Andrea. Imagine that she is a family member of yours. And I ask you, would you decrease allocations to affordable housing if Andrea was your mom or your cousin or your sister? I hope not. The choice actually is yours. And I want you to know that my congregation, along with other congregations across Hillsborough County, are praying that each of you maintains the commitment that you had made, that you will, as promised, keep the $10 million to provide affordable housing for all those in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Last three speakers, Shirley Susich, Geraldine Rogers-Toombs, and then John Day. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Shirley Susich. I'm a 74-year-old retired legal secretary. I'm a member of St. John's Episcopal Church in Hyde Park. I'm a member of Hope. I'm a volunteer with Love Inc. of Metro Tampa and of Faith Cafe. I've been forced to move twice since September of 2021 because of exorbitant rent increases. The first time, my rent went up $370 a month. That's $4,440 a year. The second time, my rent went up $385 a month. That's $4,620 a year. I want you to believe me when I tell you that my pension did not increase at that same rate. But I'm one of the lucky ones. After a little bit over 2 years of being on a wait list, I was able to get into a low-income senior apartment complex. I mentioned that I volunteer with Love Inc. of Metro Tampa. I interview people who call us for help. More than 50% of the calls we receive are for assistance finding affordable housing. The people who I talk to are mostly people who have lived in the Tampa Bay area all their lives. And they found that they can't make ends meet. The people who we serve at Faith Cafe, a hot meal 7 days a week, are our neighbors. And they're food insecure. In the month of July, we broke all records for the number of people who came through our door. I'm not going to tell you all of the stories that I could tell you about the people who I meet through these two ministries. Instead, I want to ask you a question. Thinking about the kind of community that you want to live in and raise your family in, what are you willing to do to make that community a reality for the people who you serve? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Geraldine Rogers Toombs. And the last speaker will be John Day. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Geraldine Rogers Toombs. The Hope Affordable Housing Fund has been a valuable resource for low to moderate income citizens in Hillsborough County. Many families and individuals became recipients of decent affordable housing because of the Hope Fund, which helps stabilize households. Unfortunately, the Hope Fund was reduced by $8 million for this fiscal year. The timing of that decision posed additional hardships on struggling families and individuals. Since the inception of the Hope Affordable Housing Fund, rent and housing costs increased by 42%, according to analysts, in addition to an overall increase in the basic living expenses. Even homelessness appears to have worsened over the past few years. I doubt if you can go practically to any area in Tampa and not see people sleeping on sidewalks and bus benches and stuff like that. We really need to reassess what we're doing. The question is, how can we better serve this underprivileged population? Adequate funding of the Hope Affordable Housing Fund will make a positive impact on stabilizing struggling families and individuals. Please restore the Hope Affordable Housing Fund back to a minimum of $10 million or more. Our community is stronger when we work together to serve people in need, our families and children, seniors, disabled, and homeless people. Human justice is one major source of poverty. The Creator constantly shows concern and compassion for the poor. God is concerned for persons who suffer in any way. Proverbs 14:31 states, "He who oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God." And I just would like to share an experience my family had a few months ago. I have a young niece that is renting a one-bedroom apartment for $1,400 per month. They cut her work hours, and she didn't have enough money to meet her obligations. And my family, we came together to make sure she could sustain herself in that particular residence. However, everybody's not able to help their family in times of need. We need to reconsider what we're doing and how we're doing it. As I stated, read Proverbs 14:31 and see if it makes a difference in how you perceive your fellow man. Thank you so much for your thought, for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Last speaker this morning is John Day. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is John Day. I'd like to ask you to restore the Affordable Housing Act completely to $10 million. All this gets very abstract when you're dealing with a bunch of numbers and all that sort of thing. So I'd like to try to make it very concrete. This idea hit me when I heard a speaker last time, so it's not original with me. He said, consider the Affordable Care Act versus the entire budget. So he took a little medicine dropper and scooped a little bit of water out of a gallon jug. That's the comparison. A tiny bit of water in an eyedropper in the jug. I thought that was very, very dramatic. And I thought about it when I got home. Let's look at it another way. Let's say that each dollar you're spending is a second. Okay? Take out your cell phones, take $10 million, put the zeros behind it, and let's divide by 60. You've got 10 million seconds to live. Divide by 60, that gives you the number of minutes. Divide by 60 again, that gives you a number of hours. Divide by 24. Pretty soon, what you're left with is a baby. 3 months, 3.4 months old. That's just a little baby. Consider holding that little baby. Now take your whole budget. Go through the same exercise. What have you got? When I did it this morning, I did it on last year's budget, which was something like $6 billion. Now I hear it's up to $10 billion. But let's take the $6 billion. Or go through the same exercise. You wind up with a grown person, 31 and a half years old. So think about that. You got a little baby here, 3.5 months old, and you're dealing with a person 31 years old. Think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that closes public comment. We'll go into a board discussion and the flagging process. Commissioner Wostel.
Thank you, Commissioner Hagan, and thank you for the members of the public. I always get uneasy right when someone starts quoting Bible verses, because you can always point to a different one that contradicts one or the other. I would challenge the one quoted with Exodus 20:15, which is, of course, thou shalt not steal, which is also one of the 10 Commandments. But I'll digress. Administrator-wise, one thing I just noticed as I sat down, did you receive any personal commissioner requests out of the relieved CIT funds to be put into the CIP? And if you did, could you please, I'll make a request of information to provide that list to all of our offices?
I'm not recalling any, so I'm looking at Kevin and Tom just to see if there was
Okay,
anything.
we'll think deep on that, because I see a couple that I think if there were individual requests, I think that those out of relieved CIT funds, that should be coming back to a big board decision, just like all of the other flagging process. So I'll take that one up later.
Okay.
I asked when the budget was presented many items, which I have not gotten a response on yet, and I'm not going to chase people down. I was promised responses, which was were all of these policies and budgetary monetary controls utilized? I was said that you would get back to me on several items. I haven't heard anything. I was pointed to page 173 of the budget, which I did go back and check, and that's supposed to be the matrix of services that we utilized to do base calculations on what our core services as a body are supposed to be. That is not a matrix of service. That's a list. That's a list of services. So I'm still very interested on if do you recall all of the board policies that I referenced? Some that require a supermajority vote to alter. And if you followed those policies on managing the increases of the budget, did you do it in ratio of inflation plus population growth? Did we get any of those answers?
Commissioner, we for the expenditures, we look at population growth, government inflation, and certain mandates that are also included in that calculation. And we have looked at that calculation and feel that we're within it.
Could you provide it to me like was promised to me at the last meeting? Because
Yes.
I'd like to see it.
Yes.
Okay. On page 356 of the budget, can you tell me what one-time allocated funds of $8.8 million in non-departmental allotments is? Can you describe to me in detail exactly what that is going to be used for? That's a problem with rolled-up budgets.
So those funds are in there, and they provide some flexibility for some things that come up that are unexpected. They also provide some flexibility when it comes to personnel costs and such. And we then are able to access those at certain times. It tends to be a relatively low amount that's accessed, but it does offer that flexibility through the year. And I believe it has decreased. It was perhaps 11-ish last year. We did decrease it this year.
It was 9.9.
9.9.
You're reducing it to 8.8, but it looks like we're budgeting sometimes 10, 20x of what we actually use. So it seems that we could afford a slight reduction in there if we needed to.
Could, probably, yes.
Can you tell me the cultural assets program, it went from 2.1 down to 1.5. I thought that was a flat funded program of like the historic preservation of about $1 million a year.
It is a flat, but those are items that sometimes go across fiscal years, and so we do have some carry forward funds that occur.
And so you're saying that it's a flat 1.5. We were at 2.1. So you're saying that there's exactly $500,000 of carry forward on that?
I can't say right now that's the exact amount, but I think it's somewhere in that area. In that, yes, we do have some carry forward in that program.
Okay. On page 357 of non-departmental allotments, unallocated funds budgeted this year of $7 million. Is those funds available to this commission to utilize? And can you tell me if it's countywide or unincorporated?
Those are the funds in the unincorporated area, in the countywide fund that have been identified for opportunities to flag.
Okay, so these are where the flag dollars, okay. The two USF items, I've never seen those before, and they've never come before us as a flag. They're not on the flag list. They're not on the nonprofit list. $1.4 million to an innovation district master plan, $200,000 to a high-tech incubator rolling. Are we spending that? Because it looks like the adopted and the actual, so it looks like we have 100% utilized that. But on the district master plan, it looks like there's 1.432 million, but we're using, last year, 23, we used 7,000. So can you explain that line item to us, please?
So the USF Innovation District is some dollars that were put into the non-department allotments some years ago to fund initiatives related to that area. Over the years, much of that has rolled forward. Currently, we've rolled forward that 200,000 for the, or the $1.4 million for the University Area Innovation District Plan.
Excuse me,
The
Kevin.
expenditures were low.
This is also where we have some money in there for the Mosey RFP and the
Thank you.
consultant there.
Thank you. Yes.
See, this is, I guess, well, I go back to my constant complaint about a transparent budget. Is it Mosey or is it the USF Area High Innovation Plan? Because we only approved $50,000 for that study. So how much of this money is available for reappropriation if this board deems it? That's the problem with all these line items that have long, historically buried 7 figures. It doesn't look like a lot on one line item, but when you add it all of a sudden you're at 8 figures for a reallocation. So how much of that is available exactly? Outside of which I supported Commissioner Hagan's item on doing that study. So outside of that, $50,000, how much of that money is available?
Outside of the 50,
We
if
could
the
probably
board
reduce it.
could be reduced.
Okay, so that's about, we'll just call it $1,350,000 available in that line item. The Waimama Community Plan implementation. This board has, I've heard that there's some challenges on the Planning Commission, which I'm sure we'll get into later on submittal, but this board has been considering, and there seems to be some concurrency on expansion of the urban service area, which from what I can tell would largely do away with the WVR2 and much of the costs of implementing that community benefits, where Planning Commission staff defined it as a community kind of police that would go around and supersede the will of the commission if developers were doing something that they don't like. I think that's almost an exact verbatim of the recording of that meeting 3 or 4 years ago. So that $745,000, from what I can tell in all respects, can now be relieved from the countywide budget, because much of the things that were going to cost to implement that plan are going to go away once if the urban service area is shifted out, WVRT goes away, and the expenses go away.
If the board desires, the 745 could go away, and if in the future, when something were to come forward, and if there was some funding needed, then a budget amendment could be brought forth to fund it.
Okay, bear with me, Mr. Chair. I agree actually that we don't do the workshops because we don't really talk a lot, so we might as well, we're all here, just pound it out in one session. Tampa Port Authority, which I fully support. I noticed that they have a new $150,000 on here. I was only surprised because they are their own property taxing authority of about $13 million a year. So I was surprised that we were flagging them our property taxes. Do we know where that came from?
That 150 was elsewhere within the budget, and it appears now in the non-departmental allotments. That pays for some pilot operations for the port that the county has been funding for many, many years. It's just that it was elsewhere.
Okay, I could be talked into that, but can you explain to me what you mean elsewhere? Because these types of things constantly come up, and it's like, well, where was elsewhere, and how do we keep finding money? And it seems to be a consistent pattern.
That one, it was apparently, as I look at that page, it was not in non-departmental allotments in FY22 and 23 and prior. I believe that it may have shown up in government allocations, what we call government transfers. And as we looked at it, we thought that it was more appropriate to move that to non-departmental allotments.
Okay, and finally on that list, redevelopment. Last year it was 2 million, 1.5 million. It's non-descriptive. What is it? What's that line item, just as redevelopment?
That is something that economic development sometimes accesses and able to have funds to take areas that have declined and be able to do a redevelopment plan.
Okay.
Again, that's an area, if the board were wish to reduce it, it could be reduced, and if there was a future item, we could do a budget amendment if needed to reflect that particular redevelopment.
Well, yeah, I mean, just for the board's reference, we've spent less than 50% of it for at least the past 5 years that I could go back and look. I mean, and we're scrambling for money on many items, so that's 1.5 million. All right. And finally, I'm just going to jump into the nonprofit section. This is something that we've come a long way on, and I really appreciate all that. I will say that there is one particular item that I've asked staff, and I really appreciated the honest feedback because I had a feeling, and this one particular, or it's not that any organization is good or bad, but this one may or may not have revealed that they're also getting several $100,000s of our property taxes from the school board, which was not disclosed at the time, to my understanding. They're also getting $500,000 static, which I hope that I can get a majority of this board to agree that we need to go back and analyze all of the permanent ones that we've done at some point. This one's a much newer one, and I wanted to know, since they're focused on job placements, I wanted that answer, and essentially the answer honestly back to me was, Commissioner, we can't give you that honest answer because that's not actually what they do. And I really appreciated that feedback because I think that's important, and I'm glad that we have protocols and guardrails in place now, but we didn't then. So I have a motion, and I really truly support staff's work on, because of sunshine, making it more clear about my attempt last year to do the property tax swap. Commissioner Hagan and Commissioner Miller, a property tax swap is going to, you guys individually, Commissioner Hagan almost entirely encompasses Temple Terrace. You entirely encompass the city of Plant City. You will be reducing, you're gonna be commissioners that lead the way in reducing the cost of living, the cost of homes, the cost of businesses in 33% of our population and in 100% of your two jurisdictions of Temple Terrace. I actually think that Commissioner Myers might skim the edge of, the very, very edge of Temple Terrace. And this is a very meaningful move. I believe that when I ask the budget officer, are we following those protocols? Are we following all of the monetary controls that we've had in place for years that I don't believe that we're following all of? So before I make my motion, especially since the talk of the day is affordable housing and reducing all of these property taxes in those three jurisdictions will reduce their property taxes. Is the Elmo working yet? I'm going to run through something, and I'm going to put some pictures on the Elmo of something that came to light to me. And this is the county's P-card spending. I didn't know what that was. I've never heard of the word P-card. But when we talk about are we managing our budget in the most fiscally responsible way, and I've tried to get us closer to there, and I find all of these policies. I get acknowledgement that we're not following some of the policies. I can't get clear answers on some of the other ones. We don't talk about it enough. So in the Affordable Housing Department, in just this year on P-card spending, we have spent $7,000 on Amazon, coded as office supplies. $43,000 were spent on travel to some of these conferences. Out of 33 employees, we sent 14 of 33 with $530 per registration. Total cost of lodging $5,500. So upwards of 5 figures to one conference. To another conference, the FCDA, we sent 18 out of 33 employees for $500 per registration, $700 for individual hotel lodgings, specifically to some that I'm going to put up on the screen of the Diplomat Beach Resort, Mandalay Bay Hotel Resort in Las Vegas. We paid for an entire trip for the leader of the department to go to an NAACP conference to see presidential candidate Joe Biden speak for an entire week, which I'm curious is even a role and function of government to be participating in organizations that are clearly political organizations. So when I say are we using our budgetary and monetary controls to regulate our spending, I don't think that we are. and it's frustrating. And this is just one area. And I'm really curious how doing any of this and not just sending maybe one or two people from a department from a very luxurious conference to come back and give feedback to the rest of the department might be more fiscally conservative, and more so how this is possibly making housing more affordable from the department that's supposed to be in charge of it. So I don't think that we've put our best foot forward. I don't think that 0.1 millage rate swap is good enough. I asked the county budget officer, which is our county administrator, if there was any opportunity. She said that this is all the money that she could find. I understand, but I think that we can take one step forward. So I have a motion, Mr. Chair. I have a motion to reallocate the $745,000 of the Waimama CPI, $500,000 from the Future Career Academy, and the $10 million from Ordinance 1919, and any remainder from the countywide reserves, which right now I believe that we're a little bit over 12 million, and additionally, the $1 million of my flag items for transportation to go towards an additional 0.1 millage rate swap. Accomplishing this will effectively reduce the cost of living for 460,000 residents of Hillsborough County. It will improve home affordability for 175,000 households in Hillsborough County. It will reduce the cost of business for women-owned employers for 2,700 businesses in Hillsborough County. It will reduce the cost of businesses for 2,800 minority-owned employers in Hillsborough County. It will reduce the cost of business for 750 veterans of Hillsborough County. And it will reduce the cost of home ownership and living for 23,000 veterans in Hillsborough County. That is my motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Worstel, second Commissioner Cameron Cepeda. Do you have any comments on the motion? Commissioner Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, before I address the motion, I would like to thank staff for taking the time to present the budget to us. And Kevin, thank you for your steadfast standing before us in answering the questions. Regarding the motion, I'm going to ask County Administrator and Legal Counsel, have y'all seen the motion that is being presented to us today from Commissioner Worstel? Have any idea about the motion?
We haven't seen it, so it might just take us just a few minutes to recalculate that, which we can.
Okay.
Which we can.
So Commissioner Watson, I'm going to ask, could we table till we have our next budget meeting so that...
No, point of order, Mr. Chair.
I'm just...
It's inappropriate for us to have to run by motions by the administrators during a publicly ordered sunshine meeting.
You can address the question, though, maybe in the motion, but...
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it necessary to adopt this today?
So I think so let's make sure that I understand what you're asking. Because the most important part for us to do today is to establish the not to exceed millage rates. So, and that's in your packet, and that's the small print that Kevin put up, it's in your packet. If we want to do an additional millage swap, it would require us to make these changes. So we would just need a couple minutes just to make sure we get this right, because this truth in millage is so imperative that we get this correct and do this calculation. But we can do it, and there's somebody upstairs ready to do it. You just need to give us just a handful of minutes.
No, but the question I had, does it have to be today? I mean, is that even an option?
Yes, setting the millage rate does need to be done today.
Okay. Commissioner Myers.
Thank you. And that's why I was going with that, and I was going to ask if we need to recess for a few minutes so that we can get this done and come back, and then we'll know what we're voting upon based on having staff the opportunity to review it. That's all.
This
Kevin.
is Commissioner Kemp.
Hold on, Commissioner Kemp, we'll get to you in a moment.
Truly, 10 minutes is what we need, so that's all.
Commissioner Kemp, you want to comment before we
Yeah.
take a brief recess?
I do want to comment. Here's my question. I thought we have to approve the highest millage rate we would possibly charge so that we could approve whatever millage rate is there today. But if you wanted to lower the millage rate, that you can do that at a future meeting. Isn't that the case?
So the reason that that won't work is that we are, I think understand the motion is to do additional monies for the unincorporated area. And so that would raise that millage to 4.5745 while reducing the millage and the countywide accordingly. The part that needs the calculation is the part that comes below that does that percentage, and it's very specific how that calculation is, statutory requirement relating to the rollback rate. And so we just want to make sure that we do that accurately because that is the trim requirement. So it's a complicated, but we have it set up to go, and we can do that, like I said, just 10 minutes.
So, and may I ask another question? So we could have the higher countywide millage rate and the higher possible unincorporated millage rate and pass them now and still determine a more fine, take this up again as a consideration in a future meeting. Is that correct?
The millage part is accurate. The part that we have to calculate, however, is the part that comes below that, which currently is the 3.02%. And somebody's probably calculating it, frankly, upstairs as we're speaking, but we do need to make sure that we get that new number correct. The millage rate, that's the easy part, because you're saying a not to exceed amount. It's just this other number.
Correct. Okay. So we don't have, but we, I see. But we do not have to pass what the motion is today in terms of making those cuts or changing. We just have to pass what the possible top millage rates are. Is that correct?
Yes. What the motion today will set the preliminary millage for the trim notices. And outside of an extraordinary effort, that would be the maximum millage in each of the operating millages that could be adopted. The board could ultimately adopt a millage in one of the individual levies less than what is today, but not higher without an extraordinary
Understood.
effort.
So that's what I thought. So we don't have to pass the policy suggestions that Commissioner Wustel is suggesting here. We only have to pass the upper limits of the millage.
It essentially is the upper limits, and we have to read into the record the aggregate rollback rate calculation. So that is why we need to have a little bit of time to revise the motion. The motion that appears in the agenda packet today would be altered as a result.
And then if I could just add, because of what I was hearing too, is that you were suggesting that we lower the county-wide number as well.
Increase
So
the
one-
current swap from 0.1 to 0.2.
Right, okay, so I was understanding it properly. Good. So, so that would then reduce the number that's here, so then that would, you would be advertising that lower number to the public. And I'm sorry, one more thing. I did want to note that that 10 million that you're pulling out for affordable housing, I would then recommend that we, in the future, eliminate that requirement that I have to put it in the budget because you're asking for a recurring event, and so we should make that recurring as well. Just match it. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Miller.
She answered my question, but I just wanted to make sure procedurally I was going to get to see it in writing before we voted. Yes, thank you.
All right, so how much time do you think you need? Commissioner Kemp, we need to move on.
Yeah, but I have another comment. I was just asking some procedural, to understand it procedurally, but I have another comment about the vote in general.
Well, can't you address that when we come back? We're just
Yes, I
gonna,
could.
okay, thank you. How much time you need, Bonnie?
10 minutes should do it.
10:25.
Okay, we'll recess till 10:25.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome back to the Board of County Commissioners Budget Reconciliation Meeting. Bonnie, do you want to update us on?
Yes,
Where
sir. Before you the change in the millage motion. And Kevin, maybe you could put it on the Elmo for everybody. How about that? And we can go through the numbers that changed from the version that was in your packet.
So Commissioners, the numbers that changed was the operating millage for the countywide general revenue fund. It is reduced from 56309 to 55309. The environmentally sensitive land stayed the same. The combined countywide millage reduced from 56913 to 55913. The general purpose municipal service units, that increased to 4.5745 from 44745. Library remained the same. Parks and bonds remained the same. And then the percent change in the aggregate millage rate compared to the aggregate rollback rate in the motion in your packet was 3.0% increase, and that changed to a 2.55% increase. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. But Bonnie, anything else you need to add?
I guess I would just say that that impacts the rejection in the, the general fund, countywide general fund, the 16.8 or so, as we had said before, and moves about $10 million over to the unincorporated by virtue of doing this and coming from these various places, which we would need to be recurring.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on the motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Kemp?
Yes, so I just want to, and thank you, Ms. Wise. So in countywide funds, by changing this millage, we are collecting 16.8 million less dollars, correct?
Correct.
And unincorporated, the taxes still won't change in unincorporated because we're going to add a mil, or a tenth of a mil to unincorporated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we're doing this millage swap. So overall, the county's budget will lose some $6.8 million in unincorporated. Through this, $6.8 million overall. The unincorporated county won't see any change in their taxes. The people in the residents of the city of Tampa and Temple Terrace and Plant City, however, will see a reduction in their taxes by this. Those three municipalities will have, in fact, before, when we were doing it only a 0.10 mil, was it correct that average household in those three cities will see a $30 reduction in their taxes? But now I guess it would be a $60 reduction in their taxes, is that correct?
Yes.
So unincorporated would have no reduction in their taxes at all. But
Correct.
But the three cities would have $60 per average household reduction. Now, in terms of what this cuts, this absolutely, totally cuts the HOPE Affordable Housing Program, the $10 million HOPE Affordable Housing Program. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there will be zero funds. This zero funds out the HOPE Affordable Housing Program without notice, without discussion, while we had people coming here, and last year, by the way, because I know Commissioner Miller wasn't here last year, but we had, when we reduced it from, and that was a 4-3 vote, it was reduced from 10 million to 2 million, and 3 commissioners at that time did want to reduce it, zero it out. but it was reduced from 10 million to 2 million. We had 50 people, and 46 of them were begging us not to do this and talking about the need for it. And 4 people came in and very mildly spoke. And this isn't to mention even the hundreds and hundreds of emails, but 4 people came in and said, yeah, we want lower taxes. So a few people, so the residents of Hillsborough, of Tampa, and Plant City and Temple Terrace will get their reductions, but it will be at the cost of the $10 million, the primary cost, the $10 million HOPE affordable housing program will be zeroed out, and some other minor whatever that were gone through to come up, and I don't even know if it really comes up to what was said. There was no discussion made about those other items as well. So I am absolutely voting no on this. I think if this is to be done, it should be done with reason. It should be done with thought. It should be done at a future meeting where it's considered, it can be done, you know, it could be planned for next year. It shouldn't be thrown on us at the last minute with no one having notice of what this is. And with Commissioner Wustel, also just referring to it as ordinance number so-and-so, and not making it clear that this is to zero out the affordable housing budget, which I think would be so wrong and so terrible for people that are now suffering because we do not have affordable housing. We have too little. We have tens of thousands of people on waiting lists. And we are trying to do everything we can where the state has zeroed it out also. And we're trying to address that in Hillsborough County. So I think this would be terrible for the future of the county and terrible in terms of consideration for planning and thoughtful consideration for how we do our budget. I was fine with the initial millage swap, and that was done with thought and consideration. This is not being done that way.
Okay, Commissioner
I will
Cohen.
be an absolute no.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't think it should come as a surprise that I'm also going to be a no vote on this. I said last year when the $10 million affordable housing fund was eliminated from last year's budget that I thought it was an embarrassment and it was a pittance compared to what we ought to be spending to address such a huge problem that has only gotten worse in the last year. And I certainly am not in favor of eliminating it now and eliminating it going forward. I also don't want to make a change to the budget of the Future Career Academy on the fly. Just having had no notice that was going to be discussed today. And also, I just want to say, related to the money that was going to be used for some of the implementation of WRV2, I don't have any objection to going back to those dollars if the board decides to make the changes to the urban service area down the road. That hasn't happened yet, and I don't think that we should put that cart in front of the horse. So for all of those reasons, I'm also voting no. And like I said, it shouldn't be a surprise. I think when Commissioner Wustel earlier was selling the virtues of this to the district commissioners, I was intentionally left out, probably presupposing how I would see this matter.
You're not wrong.
You're quite the way with words there, Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Wustel.
I was just hoping to close out. I see Commissioner Cepeda now. I don't know, I'm sure if you'd allow her to just go first.
Yeah, Commissioner Cameron Cepeda.
Mr. Bricky, if you could please let everyone know how much you're showing will be in for this coming fiscal year in affordable housing that we'll have available.
One moment, please. In the entire budget, affordable housing is budgeted at $144 million, much of which is carry forward dollars due to the fact that projects span over fiscal years. The $10 million additional for Hope is included in the dollars, in that figure per the ordinance.
$144 million. Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Wallstrom.
Yeah, so that was a lot. I'm not going to address it. I would encourage the chair, though, to remind Commissioner Kemp that personal attacks on other commissioners are a violation of Robert's rules, which govern us for good reason. So effectively, this is going to reduce the total taxes, property tax burden on Hillsborough County residents by $12 million a year. So I like 10-year taxes. We'll just call that $120 million a year of savings. It's going to increase the unincorporated areas total funding for this .2 mil swap by $20 million a year, which we were just told would be meaningless for that area, et cetera. But are most of our needs at the county not in the unincorporated area? Our 14 years backlogs of sidewalks, lack of walkability, safety issues for all of our children. Sumner Elementary, for example, that we can't even get sidewalks to connect to their communities on. They were walking in 4-foot grass at one point, in ditches, in the rain, with no easement even, because no sidewalk was built there, because of planning. Where's all of our lack of fire rescue and safety? This funds can go towards funding more fire rescue where our most dire needs are, correct?
That, yes, service deficiencies that you talked about in transportation and fire rescue primarily hit the unincorporated fund.
So 120 million reduction from the unincorporated, 20 more a year. Over 10 years, it's $200 million more dollars that we can start putting towards public safety. Everyone's home. This is going to be the most pro-affordable housing board in the history of Hillsborough County. Because as I pointed out, 170,000 households will see a reduction in the cost of their homes, their cost of living. Not to mention all of the other ancillary benefits that are going to be passed through now, because it's also cheaper for them to run businesses in those areas, and those savings will be passed on to the community. So this is a great item. Again, I've pointed out the benefits. Commissioner Hagan, extreme benefits to all of the members of the city of Temple Terrace, extreme benefits to all of your members of the unincorporated area that also have many fire rescue needs, many sidewalk needs. I mean, poor old Carrollwood seems to just be a blip in the radar. And we can finally, and those funds, by the way, we should have another conversation about how we request the county administrator to allocate those freed up funds. So I would really appreciate your support on this good item. To say it wasn't without thought or you didn't have notice, yeah, right, I've been talking about it for 18 months. I mean, your ears have to be bleeding at this point. Put me out of my misery. I've been talking about this one nonprofit that I thought had an issue last year. So it's not like I didn't run a gambit. Nothing was surprised. As far as noticing you, I mean, I have asked, I will ask again the legislature to loosen up sunshine law to only apply to land development and rezonings, because that's what I think it was originally intended for, and we should be able to have dialogue outside of here, but we can't. So here I am, and I really appreciate you guys sitting through all of that. I know it was a lot, but we don't often communicate on these budget workshops, so here I am at the hearing. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I don't see anyone else in the queue, so I'll make a few comments before we vote.
I just would like to say,
Yes, Commissioner Kemp.
if I could, there was no forward notice. We didn't have any information about this before this meeting, specific information about this. That's why the staff had to take a break for 10 minutes to recalculate. So that I would want to make that clear. And there were no personal attacks. I'll make that clear.
All right, thank you. All right, well, experience tells me that there will be additional changes between now and our second public hearing, whether it's at a board meeting or one of the two public hearings. I do appreciate, I want to say, Commissioner Wostel's budget analysis and valid questions that he asked, and I think that actually confirms that there will be changes moving forward. I support the millage swap that's in the recommended budget, and I will I didn't realize it was 18 months, but I commend Commissioner Wilson's leadership on that issue. My time in office, I asked Tom this because I wasn't sure the exact number, but I've supported, I think, at least 15 different millage reductions through the years, many years, championing those, in fact. And I was on the board and supported when we adopted the spending cap policy that that was referenced here earlier. So I certainly have a strong history of supporting tax relief. I'm open to considering some of the changes that Commissioner Wilstel identified in his motion. And while I admire the bold nature of the motion, I can't support it today. I think it's just a little too much. However, I am open to making budget changes during the first public hearing. With respect to, talk a lot about affordable housing policy, again, I'm open to considering if we want to change that moving forward, so we don't have to avoid this exercise every year. However, I will say last year there was an attempt to eliminate all of the funding, and I would not do that. That was the reason why we did fund $2 million, and I will say that moving forward, if we want to address that again, I'm going to support at least $2 million of that. I'm not going to support eliminating it all. So I don't plan on addressing that today, but just know that moving forward on that. So that's kind of where I am today. But I do appreciate all of the work and the depth and the bold nature of what Commissioner Wilson's trying to achieve. All right, so with that, we got a motion on the floor. Commissioner Wilson, second Commissioner Cameron Cepeda, please record your vote.
No.
My screen is blank. No vote, no. Rick, come over, please. Thank you.
Motion failed, 3-4. Commissioners Cohen, Hagan, Kemp, and Myers voted no.
Okay. So with that, I suggest we address the flag items that we have here. I would suggest that we, again, there are going to be changes or additional items, I know, coming forward at the public hearings, but I would suggest that we go ahead and address these, and then in talking with Bonnie on the items that are identified as community projects, that probably going to need a little more work from staff to identify the potential funding sources for that. I know with one of them, the indigent health care may be a possibility, indigent health care fund. But so I think that's one of the items that we should address at the public hearing, but I would suggest that we move forward with the flag items that have been identified today. Commissioner Myers?
Move for approval of the flag items that have been identified.
Point of order.
Okay, we have a motion, Commissioner Myers, second Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Wilstel?
Doing this requires you to waive the rules.
Can I have clarification on that?
We have a non-earmarking policy in Hillsborough County. Doing that requires a waiver of the rules.
Is that accurate?
Maybe that's just the safest thing to do.
Move the waive the rules.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Myers to waive the rules, second Commissioner Cohen. Any comments on the motion? Please record your vote.
Yes.
Yes,
Motion carried 6-1. Commissioner Wostel voted no.
Okay, now to the motion by Commissioner Myers, second Commissioner Cohen. Anyone want to speak to the motion on the floor?
I would like to.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out, since this is really our only chance to talk to one another about this, that this is obviously a work in progress for all of us. And I am going to be making a few minor adjustments to my list. One will include something related to the Lighthouse for the Blind. Another thing is that I am going to thank and attempt to assist Commissioner Cameron Cepeda with the work you're doing to support the Cuban Civic Club. I'm aware of that issue as well, has to do with something related to the fire marshal, and I'm also going to attempt to be supportive of that effort as we move forward. I just wanted to let everyone know those things because, like I said, I'm going to be working on my list over the next few weeks and continuing to provide all the backup for the additional items. Thanks.
Commissioner Wostel?
I just wanted to point out how, in my opinion, extremely disrespectful it is to the voters that we just finally put in a policy to not do future money that we don't know is going to be here or not. And for us to do it without even us getting through one budget cycle with that new policy in place is just so disenfranchising for us to start trying to allocate future monies that we don't know whether or not it's going to be there. And I was very disappointed to see those added to this list. So thank you very much.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. No other comments. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, ask for grace in the fact that I'm a little behind on this, and I will have my list to you. There was no ill intent there. It's simply just there's only so many hours in the day, and I appreciate your patience in me getting my list for the next hearing, or at least the week prior to. Thank you very much.
Totally understood. Okay, we got a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller? Motion carried 6-1. Commissioner Wostel voted no.
All right, now I need to have a motion to pass the setting the trim millages. Commissioner Cohen, you're usually good at this, aren't you?
I'll be happy to read it if someone could hand it to me. Thank you. All right, I move that we set the following proposed operating and debt service millages for the purpose of the trim notices and set the date, time, and place of the first public hearing on the Hillsborough County fiscal year 2025 budget. Countywide millages, operating general revenue fund 5.6309 mils, debt service, environmentally sensitive lands 0.604 mils, total countywide millage. From the top? Okay, under debt service, environmentally sensitive lands 0.0604 mils, total countywide millage 5.6913 mils. Now, non-countywide millages, operating general purpose municipal services taxing unit 4.4745 mils, library services district 0.5583 mils, debt service, parks and recreation bonds 0.0259 mils. The proposed percent change of the aggregate millage rate from the aggregate rolled back millage rate as defined by state statute is an increase of 3.02% and is shown on line 27, Department of Revenue Form DR 420. The date, time, and place of the first public hearing on the budget will be Thursday, September 12th, 2024 at 6 p.m. at the Frederick B. Carl County Center, second floor boardroom, 601 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida 33602. By approving this motion, the appropriate official is authorized to execute the necessary Department of Revenue forms.
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Cohen, second Commissioner Myers. Commissioner Wostel.
So just to be clear, a yes vote on this would mean that you are voting to increase the taxes of Hillsborough County residents by 3.02%.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
Yes.
Motion carried, 4-3. Commissioner Miller, Cameron Cepeda, and Wostel voted no.
Okay, Bonnie, any other items?
No.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.